Hey Cameron, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you, Akash?
I'm good. So we wanted to have this session wherein we discuss a bunch of topics that happened during the week. And one of the things that I noticed this week, just to give an introduction, Cameron is the economist. I'm the statistician. But even though Cameron is also proficient in quantitative techniques, we'll use these tools to figure out how we can analyze the world that we live in and how to make sense of it for the rest of the people. So one of the things that happened during the week was the release of iPro uh, Vision Pro,
Mm.
and that led to a lot of people speculating: is it a huge step change in technology, wherein lots of apps and jobs will be created using this new step change function of technology? So we wanted to have a discussion. So what do you think of Vision Pro and its use cases in terms of improvement of productivity, improvement of tasks that might help in increase in GDP? Let's say, is it a role or is it too early to say?
So I'm a constant like bear on augmented reality, or mixed reality or whatever. And the reason I'm a bear is I just don't see the applications that much. Like for sure you can do. There's a lot of like fun applications, right? So like you can like say play Pokemon Go and actually see the Pokemon on the sidewalk or something like that. And maybe there's some applications with like video conferencing, but yeah, I just don't see like the massive amount of applications, right? Like computer vision, there's like hundreds and thousands of startups you can use that can use computer vision, and you can combine that also with virtual reality. But like, I just feel like it's more of a gimmick at this point. Like, partially is because it's got the like Julia software engine, like software code problem, right? Like, not enough people are developing on it. That's the one problem. And I mean, basically like a feedback loop, right? So like, not that many people use it because there's not that many external apps, and there's no one developing external apps because no one's really using it. And so, I mean, these big tech companies like, Facebook is pushing Oculus, Apple is pushing Vision Pro, but they're spending so much money on these things, but I just don't see, the massive number of applications that this stuff can generate.
So the thing that you defined right there is what is termed as network effects, right?
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
a so how would a professional economists define network effect for other people to understand? If there is a network effect, what's the symptom? Is there a way to measure it? What's the unit of measure? I mean, even if it is not there, I think you can probably think about it so that like other people can think about it, because a lot of people are doing social apps as entrepreneurs, and they have to understand you have to hit sufficient volume before you become big enough to generate revenue or generate revenue through advertisements. So how would you define network effects?
Yeah, I mean, so this is like, what is Facebook's bread and butter? Like, why do you think Facebook has so many followers? And how I define it is exactly through this example, right? Like, if there are like, not that many, like a couple million people on Facebook, the chances that you have friends on Facebook is very low if you're like 300 million people in the United States. But if 100 or 200 million people are on Facebook, then it's much more attractive for you to join Facebook. So thus, the more people they have, the more people are willing to join. So it's a positive feedback loop, right? If all my friends are on Facebook, then I'm more likely to join. If none of my friends are Facebook, or few of my friends are Facebook, I'm less likely to join. And again, that's just a single person, right? So the more people are on the network, the bigger advantage it is for other people to join.
And is there a threshold beyond which, let's say, some version of Facebook is happening? Let's say Halo is an interesting app which
Mhm.
does something similar to meetup.com, wherein it
Mhm.
organizes events. What's the threshold beyond which you say network effect has existed? And one of the metrics that you pointed out was the proportion of population. Let's say the 330 million people and 100 million, let's say one third are on it, then I think it's sufficient. What is there a threshold, but it's not clearly defined anywhere.
I mean, there has been research in economics on percolation and phase transitions, right? And so you can think, yeah, probably, right? So probably there is like this, the number of people, there is some threshold where the number of people, you're likely to have X number of friends, and if you have X number of friends, you're more likely to join, right? So I imagine there is some sort of phase transition stuff. The other analogy I'd put to it is a bubbles, right? Like financial bubbles. So again, this is sort of like, instead of joining the social network, you're joining and buying the stock. And here it is fairly clear in the literature that there is sort of not a precise threshold, but certain, a fuzzy threshold where you have Bitcoin at 10,000 and then it goes up to 50 or 70,000 in the course of a couple of weeks or months, right? So there is some fuzzy threshold. I mean, it isn't as clear as, let's say, like in when you have sort of like pandemic models, like with COVID, like if the R, which is how easy you are to transmit the disease, is above 1, then everyone should get affected. If it's below 1, no one will, or very few people will be affected. It's not that stark, but I imagine there is a sort of fuzzy phase transition boundary where these economic phenomena, like, get positive feedback loops, right?
Positive feedback. If I can add some segue to it, in macroeconomics, I mean, you might know this better. There was a book that was written by a couple of economists which said the amount of debt that country can hold beyond which they get into a downward spiral. And eventually it turned out there was a problem in the data set and the whole thesis sort of fell through. And I cannot recall who the couple of economists are.
It's Reinhart and Rogoff, right? They wrote a paper.
Reinhart and Rogoff.
They had a book too. And then, yes, their book was based on a couple of their papers. So it doesn't invalidate their entire book because they didn't base their entire book on a single paper, but a PhD student from University of UMass Amherst actually was reproducing their work and found out that essentially they had an Excel error where, like, the first 4 or 5 countries they ignored, and when you added them in, this phase transition sort of thing no longer actually was it was no longer, the data no longer suggested that, right?
Yeah. And do you think like that analogy is appropriate, meaning there is phase transition in network effects related to social media, and then there is phase transition in terms of the amount of debt. But I think these are notional thresholds. I mean, nobody clearly knows at what point all the stakeholders, all the investors around the world lose confidence. It's the eye of the beholder. The eye. What do you call that? Eye of the beholder.
Yeah.
It's in the eye of the beholder problem.
Yeah, I mean, so my sort of thing is, I still sort of believe, without any evidence, just based on intuition, that like you have people that default, countries defaulting on their debt. I believe that's still a phase transition. Now, I think it's probably a different phase transition for different countries and different points in time. So it's really hard to actually figure out what that is. And that's my guess why Reinhart and Rogoff, their result was actually a null result. But I do believe that, let's say we are omniscient and we can know, are very close to omniscient. I do believe, we would realize that there are phase transitions in terms of the debt being too high and then everyone deciding, hey, I'm no longer loaning money to like Cambodia or Venezuela or whatever, right?
Yeah. And for general audience who would not, let's say, be in the professional circles of economics or statistics, how does the interplay between economics and statistics happen, and how closely related are they? I tend to claim that they're sort of like sister subjects. Like every time there is a interesting revolution that happens in quantitative topics, the same proof methods are used in economics and a bunch of models get developed. Would you concur with something like that, or would you think the effect is much more?
I mean, I do think in some cases economists have physics MB, and that is sometimes good and sometimes bad. And when I say physics MB, I mean engineering in general, right? Like, we like to fashion ourselves as very technical people that learn, all the quantitative techniques from machine learning to, I don't know, Noether's theorem or whatever, which we don't actually talk about, but like physics stuff, right? And so the one thing where this has got us into trouble is the sort of macro modeling that we do is all these big massive models that essentially assume you have a bunch of rational agents and these agents behave in a certain way, and how do we sort of modify the parameters of our model? So our model would have parameters like the discount rate or like the rate of depreciation of capital or labor share in the economy. So these are parameters that really correspond to real world primitives. And so in this macro framework, what you're basically doing is you're saying, what are the values of these parameters such that when the agent is in this environment that it's in, the agent will produce consumption, output, investment, blah, 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 that looks like real world data, right? And so this is a model that is really sort of micro-founded, right? So one of the terms I think scientists use is like reduction, right? So like you reduce it down. So you reduce a ecological phenomena to biology, you reduce a biology phenomena to chemistry, you reduce a chemical phenomena into like atoms and physics, basically electronic charge and atoms, right? And so there is this sort of extent that we do this in macro too. Like we turn the economy into a bunch of agents, then we turn a bunch of agents into people, individual people maximizing utility. And there are a lot of problems with this approach, namely it ignores sort of emergent behavior, right? So like, bubbles is a big example. There's no phenomena individually where we form bubbles. The way bubbles form is people reacting with other people, right? And it's not like we don't have these tools in macro, but the idea is that we need to get super technical in modeling the macro economy, I think has done more harm than good, right? And the reason I argue for that is our prediction when if you just use like a linear regression or you just use like a, just a simple model, right? Whatever it is, oftentimes, our forecasts are much better than if you use these massive complex models, which assume agents are doing things and firms are doing things and everyone is sort of reduced to individual atomistic components. There's just no forecasting here, right? And there's no prediction. Economists will say, well, this is more realistic, right? But it's not. You can't be real if you're not able to forecast the economy. No matter how realistic it is, it doesn't matter because clearly you're converging to a point that is not, real on the spectrum. Maybe it's easy to interpret, but if it has no predictive power, there's no point in interpreting it. And so this infatuation with physics MB has caused the economists to be super engineers and to over engineer essentially their models. That is my opinion. I mean, these are the models I work on, so I'm a little bit of a hypocrite, but I feel that way.
Yeah, I think I appreciate the honesty on that. But the idea of any model is to hit the essence in some meaningful way and forget about everything that's around it. When that happens, everything around it has sufficient effects on the periphery that changes the effect in question. So I think a model essentially is an abstraction wherein you leave out all the other details that you're not interested in and you focus on the one phenomenon that you are interested in and hoping the insight that comes out of it is valuable enough to accommodate this as a paper in the pantheon of papers. That's it. That's the general idea. But given that, getting back to Vision Pro, if there were to be significant use cases, it'll probably be in the immediate sense, it'll probably be in shopping and sports because that's the immersive aspect of it. Apart from the fact that you can sit in your living room and live alternative realities, that seems too far-fetched as to how big that market is. But the immediate market that I can think of is sports and shopping, wherein you want to try something out and see how it looks in the camera and check out if it makes sense to try out a bunch of outfits. And I think these are the use cases that people might look at. But are there other use cases that you can foresee apart from sports and shopping?
So yeah, so I assume when you're talking about shopping, it's like, putting clothes on your body, right? And stuff like that. Or like if you're like on Wayfair or something, I know Wayfair is already developing this software, but like you can put like furniture in your room and like move it around and see how it looks like. And then sports, yes, I agree would be cool too. Let me see. I have a list of things that I looked at, that I pulled up. So obviously video games is another thing, but yeah, I think video games, there are a lot of really fun video games, and I think it would be hard to compete against, let's say, like an Elder Ring franchise or, Grand Theft Auto franchise. I mean, at some point, someone's going to develop a really awesome augmented reality or virtual reality game. But right now, again, there's that dearth of there's not enough people buying Vision Pro and not enough developers designing for it.
Just on that number, right? If I may, you can look up the details while I do this. So about 300. I read this the other day. There were 300,000 pre-orders for Vision Pro,
Hmm.
and there are about 800 developers working on apps which in a customized manner work on Vision Pro. You think that's a big enough number, or is it like a very small dot in the big economy?
Yeah, I mean, I confess I'm not super up to date on the market, like just the market of Vision Pro. All I know is Oculus has this problem, right? And I mean, Vision Pro is the same thing. I think. Do you know how much Vision Pro costs? I imagine it's a couple
Three
thousand.
thousand five hundred
Yeah,
dollars.
yeah, exactly, right. So $3,500. But yeah, I mean, if anyone can push software, it is Apple, right? It is not, Facebook does not have an expertise in software or hardware, sorry. Apple has an expertise in hardware, like, and they have, basically, they have a like ingrained audience, right? So like a captured audience, because you have hundreds of thousands of people that all they will do or buy anything Apple produces, right? So if anyone can do AR, VR, XR, that it would probably be Apple. But again, I think $300-$500 is quite expensive for a basically something that's a recreation software that they might have a lot of software engineers, but they don't have that many apps at this point, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is like a development project, right? I
Mm,
think probably this is the Pro, and probably Vision Pro 3 would be like a mass market machine
right,
where
right.
10 million, 20 million people will start using it. But that's something that that's something that everybody is paying attention to, and it's in the news quite a bit. I mean, they have promoted it with a
Hmm.
lot of social media influencers pushing it through. And there was
Hmm.
one video when somebody wore this for like 50 hours and tried out and gave a review, but there were no use cases where his life was significantly better than what it was before. So it's if you're thinking of doing treatment versus control or treatment versus placebo, I don't think this is as big an effect. But
Yeah.
maybe in the corner cases, there are quite a few use cases. But do you think like the startup world is taking notice of Vision Pro? I don't see a lot of startups developing apps for this. There are traditional software companies which want to work with Vision Pro and develop apps. I don't see a huge, talent of software engineers wanting to develop apps on Vision Pro yet. But I don't know how it will pan out. What's your view on that as to how startups might interact with Vision Pro or Quest for that matter? Quest is the name that Facebook is using, or Meta is using for its current avatar of headset.
Hmm.
Any
Yeah, I
view
mean,
on how startups might work with Apple?
Yeah, I mean, I confess this is way out of my circle of competence. So I'm just going to say things, and there's 50% chance it's right and probably 50% chance it's wrong, right? I mean, I imagine there are people, no one's stupid anymore. Big tech companies realize that they need to leverage software engineers, right? So like, the Apple store or like GPT store or whatever, whenever you introduce a big market challenging product, you don't just develop software internally, you make sure that software engineers can develop software for them as well, and you can take a cut or whatever, right? So I do imagine there are sort of smallish startups aimed at designing a particular app, right? Like I have a friend who basically works at, let's say, well, he used to work, doesn't work there anymore, but at a body atlas company, right? So essentially what it do is you can see like muscles, organs and stuff. And this is just sort of a very and you could do this in augmented reality and virtual reality, and they're trying to do that. But this is just one app, right? And this startup has like 50 or 100 people just designing essentially the atlas for a body. So I don't think there are like few opportunities for software to be developed for the Vision Pro or whatever. I just think it's right now too expensive, and the applications are there may be some applications, but you can always you can always, I guess, exaggerate the impact of startup companies that they have if they're funded by a rich VC, right? You can
Yeah,
have startups that have 50 to 100 people, but they have their product does not really have much of a business viability.
yeah, that is true. So, given that this, let's say, podcast will be watched by prospective economists, statisticians, data scientists, uh, do you have a steady diet of, let's say, people who are working in econ or markets? Do you have a steady diet of data sets that you consume in a year? Like you'd probably look at GDP numbers every quarter, you'd probably
Yeah.
look at labor data. Once every 6 weeks, the Federal Reserve changes the interest rates or has that, what do you call that, FOMC meeting?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you, apart from that, do you take a look at any other data sets on a periodic basis, on a regular basis, wherein you watch that indicator as a biomarker, so to speak, in the biology language, wherein you know the health of the economy in some meaningful way?
Yeah, I confess, despite calling myself an economist, I'm really more of an applied mathematician. I've told, I think, people like
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
before. But essentially, what I do is I use tools from statistics, math, machine learning, economics, and try to build better economic models, right? And what that means is that's my sort of division of labor, right? I'm in charge of not the only person, but I focus on building good economic models. And so the other aspect of this is in division of labor, I'm really less focused on, what the economy is looking like right now. I mean, I look at GDP numbers once in a while, FOMC numbers. I do have experience interpreting these numbers, but again, this is not like, I would say like a business, finance person, some sort of hedge fund analyst is probably looking at these numbers more carefully than I am, because, that's my job is not to basically, understand the economy. It's to build the models to help other economists essentially understand the economy. But obviously I'm not like completely unable to do sort of basic economic tasks. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And any view on interest rates? Because that's the talk of the town, and a lot of the people in, let's say, forecasting business are of the view that the interest rates might come down pretty soon, and that was negated by a slight spike in the inflation numbers again. So, any view long term, let's say in 9 months or 6 months, do you have a view as to when the interest rates, the risk-free rate, is going to come down slightly? Or
I am not sure. I really haven't followed the FOMC in that much detail. So I imagine like one thing is that the interest rates, have room to go down. I think the economy is doing well. I think the January numbers were a little bit bad. They were, inflation ticked up a little bit, and jobs was lower than you would like, but there is plenty of room to decrease the interest rates. I really, personally, I would be more of a hawk. I'm not, I don't think we should lower interest rates unless the economy is getting significantly worse than where it is. January was a slightly bad month, but there will be bad months and there will be good months even during great expansions, and so I don't think it's time to worry yet. I don't think it's necessary to lower rates yet, but again, inflation is basically at target 2%, and so there is room to lower rates. There's room to lower rates, but there's no need to do that unless it looks like the economy has a consistent pattern of declining in its the output.
in terms of in terms of the startup ecosystem, especially in machine learning, there are a bunch of companies that are getting started off late, which are in the technology stacks, so to speak. Meaning, like some people want to some people want to do training for other companies. So everybody is in the business of collecting, curating data, and at the same time training it for other companies. Now,
Right.
There are a bunch of companies which have opened up, which are alternatives for OpenAI, wherein OpenAI costs some amount of money, and then you can see if there is any parameter that you can tweak and become a value add player in that value chain. So any interesting companies, that couple of companies that we sort of discussed, they're doing some version of that. Do you see anything in that space which are interesting?
Yeah, I mean, so OpenAI is not, right, stupid, right? So they're trying to increase their network effects as much as possible. We talked about this before, right? They have like essentially an app store for the GPT, what is it, 4 now or whatever, 4.5. And they're trying to increase the network effect of their thing, right? If they are first to market, and if they build an ecosystem of apps that outperforms anyone else, then it doesn't really matter the quality of their large language models as long as they're close to good. Everyone will use their large language model and not, let's say, Gemini 1.5 or whatever, right? So I think that's the first thing that is important to say. The second thing is there, of course, are other applications of large language models that OpenAI really can't attack or maybe won't attack. Things like, there are things that sort of cannibalize their business. So, for instance, like you have like Cohere, right, is an AI company that is focused on mainly in or partially their business model, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're focused on sort of on-premise large language models, right? So like one of the issues is, of course, like you have a big company, you have all this data. Are you going to send it over the internet to OpenAI to analyze? No, that's a bad idea. So you probably need an on-prem sort of large language model, and Cohere and other companies will do stuff like that, I think. Is that right?
Yeah. So let me share my screen, and that'll be kind of fun to take a look at what other people are doing. Let me do the advanced screen. Oh. So this is an interesting company wherein, as you can see, the reason there is some amount of traction for a company like this is they're in the technology stack.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you look at all the flags that they're put out, these are the name brand companies that work in this space. And I'm assuming having pedigree and at the same time having worked in big AI companies does help build relationship with each one of these companies. So whenever a startup does come about, you immediately have relationships with all the ecosystem players. That kind of puts you on a path on, let's say, technology readiness level to, let's say, 5 or 6, wherein you're more fundable than would be the case if you just have a demo. Would you agree on this thesis? Considering you have some,
No, I don't have anything to add to that. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. So another company that I was looking at is this one, wherein it provides better decisions. So this looks more like a services company, like a traditional AI ML services company, but I think it is connected with some big players like Andrew and G. That probably is their moat, so to speak, the ecosystem that they're in, and the services that they're providing. I haven't looked at this.
Does this look like, what is this? Is this like AWS for large language models?
This is another company in the space which is doing sort of interesting stuff. And I recently came across something about Coresets, and I haven't taken a look. This is essentially combinatorial optimization, some version of that, and applying that to these. I haven't looked at this carefully at all. But apparently this has taken off. Any views on that? Have you heard of this before?
Well, so I think Tamara Broderick, who's a professor at MIT, she's done some work on Coresets probably 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you can do with it, like online learning. So what a Coreset is, I hope I'm getting this one right. I obviously haven't seen this page, but what essentially a Coreset is like, essentially you'll have like a lot of data, right? Let's say you have 1 million data points, and you'll have like certain data in different areas and different clusters. So what a Coreset is it's a weighted set of, let's say, fewer number of points, where each point has a certain weight and is located in a certain place. And the idea is, you may have 100 points in your Coreset, and each one has a different weight and a different location. But if you train on the Coreset, it's very close to training on the real data because the data has coverage in different places, right?
Is it like mathematically speaking close to Metroid? Like Metroid is like a set of independent subsets, wherein like if you have this core independent subset, you pretty much can span in any of the spaces. But I'm pretty sure the concept is quite similar. But I haven't.
Sounds reasonable, yeah.
So one of the things that I did with Metroid, which I don't know, it just occurred to me when we were describing Coreset. I think what you're looking for is independent information in each one of the weights.
Exactly.
So that like you have sufficient, the sample is sufficiently well developed so that it represents the population in some meaningful way.
Yeah,
So if you,
right.
and avoid redundancies as much as possible because it hurts the bandwidth to take the same data or same information again from the another core set as you
Right.
described it.
I mean, if you, let's say you have only 100 points, right, you can imagine you can do active learning, right, where essentially you train on the core set and then you have an additional data point and then you retrain the core set to take the additional data point into consideration and do it again when you need to do something like active learning, right? You can also do it when you're constrained in terms of memory, right? Like you may have an edge computing thing and you just feed it a core set rather than sending it to the, central processing area, right?
Yep. And what kind of advice would you give to potential economists or potential data scientists or let's say potential applied mathematicians who look at this revolution of generative AI and or more clearly specifically transformers having changed the game in quite a few levels? How would you describe a young person who is probably in an undergraduate degree, maybe in computer science, may not be in computer science, look at this field and say, how do they navigate it? And what should they do? What are the best practices that they should do? Probably every game that you play, let's say learning a new, let's say a subject or topic, 80% is best practices and probably 10% is innovation. 90% is you follow the best practices and 10% is innovation. So what are the 90% best practices that you would recommend to somebody who's a novice in this sport?
I mean, learn how to code correctly, right? Like be able to use version control and be able to, document your code and unit tests and those sorts of things. I confess I'm not nearly as good as that as I should be. And mostly it's because a lot of my research is just my own work. But yeah, that is an invaluable tool that I also need to learn and implement more. I think when it comes to like learning things, so I'm sort of like extending your question here a little bit, not quite answering it. But one of the main things is to find a project that interests you, right? Like what interests me is economics, right? And then I love economics. And so I'm applying the machine learning tools to learn something that I love. And, I also love, all right, I also really like, let's say, machine learning, right? But building a machine learning model for its own sake, there's just much less, it's just,
Motivation.
yeah, there's much less motivation. There's no chill in your spine saying, oh, wow, I'm doing something that's cutting edge, right? So
Yeah.
if you're like, as an economist, you look at some economic techniques and you say, wow, that is, you say, wow, okay, I can do a lot of stuff with machine learning on a field that impacts a lot of people, right? Or that makes an impact that in a way that resonates with me.
Yeah, I think one of the people, wait a second. One of the people who I asked this question to said like it's much better to spend your life working on some serious problem in cancer biology and make some small advance there as opposed to working on recommendation systems for advertising. Because it's like when you think of the value that you add to your own life and the meaning derived from it, I think they derive more value if they make even small advances in a recommendation system, not a recommendation system, let's say some machine learning problem inside biology or cancer biology, as opposed to working on recommendation system that will send you more ads
Yeah.
that will annoy more people eventually.
Yeah,
Would
I
you
totally
concur
agree.
with that?
Yes, I totally agree. We have way too many smart people that go to Harvard, Yale, MIT, maybe less MIT, but Harvard, Yale, whatever. And either they go to finance like my sister, which is fine. You go to finance and you make $1 bajillion, but you're really not, making a difference in like people that need it, right? You're helping rich people get richer. And, love my sister and she's great. But, I think there's so many people that go to from these elite institutions into, let's say, finance or into a software engineer at Google, and what you end up doing is optimizing, a recommendation system or an ad system so that people will buy more, whatever ads there are, right? And it's just, I feel like if I was someone like right out of college right now, it would be very tempting to make $1 bajillion, but also like, trying to make an impact, try to find some startup that is doing something impactful in the world, or even a startup where you have an outsized role in terms of influencing where the business goes, right? If you're just if you're just basically if you're just basically chasing the money, I don't know, at some point I feel like my life would feel unfulfilled, right?
Yeah, but I think not. I think I totally agree with what you're saying, except the fact that providing credit for people who don't have credit is a value add in society. Meaning, like it does, give, let's say, 2 square meals to a lot of people who wouldn't have 2 square meals if the credit isn't there. Would you agree with that?
Sure, and this is something I don't understand. There's a couple, like, let's strongman the other argument here.
Yeah.
But there's a couple things where I would think about. So first is, like, for whatever reason, every developed country that develops very fast or develops to become as rich as something like Europe or the United States has a really involved financial system. So I don't know whether that's cause and effect, but for whatever reason, you can make the argument that a developed financial system is certainly correlated with economic development. Does it lead to economic development, or as a result? I'm not sure, but it's one of those things where, yeah, I would agree that for whatever reason, developed financial system is at least correlated with the development. So maybe you are making a lot of difference by being a finance person. But I would argue most of the difference comes from making rich people richer and not allowing, let's say, like random people. Like random people are going to buy, if they buy a stock or something of retail investors, they're probably going to make a mistake and lose a lot of money, right? And so we're not helping these people. Now, the other, what is it called? Steel man argument or whatever is the effective altruism argument, which I think is valid in some sense, which is essentially the effective altruism argument before they went into like, existential AI risk and silly things like that. Essentially is, I mean, not silly. Existential AI is I think a reasonable thing to think about, but don't spend too much brain power thinking about it. But they would argue essentially go get the job that pays the most and then just donate all your money to hire doctors or whatever to, help people. And that's a valid argument. And just, maybe it's me being, that's a valid argument and I should consider it. But, I think it's better to do what you feel like makes an impact rather than just making a whole lot of money and then using that money to pay other people to do good. I don't know. It feels like,
And just looking at effective altruism as a general idea, right?
Right.
Even though the word altruism is there in the phrase,
Mm-hmm.
you're doing it for your own posterity, your own reputation for eternity. You want, if you really are into the literal altruism idea, then you would do the altruism anonymously. But that isn't the case. Now, if you think about it that way, even if you want to, give meaning to other people, you're inspired by, let's say, the Einsteins of the world or the, Carnegies of the world, right? So I don't know if altruism is the right way to do it. I mean, people find meaning in different things, and that'll always be the case. And just getting back to this idea whether all developed countries have very good financial system, they also are high trust societies.
Yeah.
There is no developed country which is a low trust society, even though when you're in it, it feels as if things cannot be as bad as they are right now, but it's much better than any other country with high interest rates, where interest rates are like double-digit numbers constantly, and inflation is always through the roof, and somebody is always strong-arming, let's say, the economic participants in the economy. Compared to that, a well-developed financial system wherein credit-worthy borrowers always get credit is a good system. And I think I think that side of the economy lacks good PR. Probably the altruism economy has a lot of PR because it's sort of the do-goodism argument. But I think the side of the economy wherein people provide credit to creditworthy borrowers and ensure that that creditworthy test that you purport or put forth is fair. And I think there's a lot of merit in that. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think it's interesting observation. I never thought of it this way, but you are certainly right that like most developed countries are high trust, and maybe high trust leads to a more developed financial system because you can
Lower
feel
interest rates,
confident in saying,
lower counterparty
yeah,
risk.
right. Well, even you can feel confident saying, "Hey, I'm going to loan you money. You're going to because we're a high trust society. I trust, and you likely will deliver and pay me back, and not run away to like, let's say, Mongolia and spend my money." But so I think that is a good point. I'd never thought about it that way. So I appreciate, it's always fun talking to people with different perspectives because it is a good point that essentially high trust is essentially necessary, or people talk about norms like democratic norms, which is not as true, but high trust society is definitely very and it sort of probably comes with economic growth, right? Like if you have a lot of economic growth, I'm thinking of things like China and India, then you develop a high trust society because you're like, okay, if we work on this together, we're going to make more money. And so let's not screw each other over because we've got this like great, we're doing well. But you are right. And I think, yeah, high trust probably also is a catalyst for developing a financial system as well. So interesting point. I appreciate that.
Yeah. I think this was another point from Sam Altman, who said, like, no matter how, I think there are two parts of this argument, if I may say so. One argument is we are going to a accelerated technological utopia where everything is cheaper. But reality is not true because there will always be a price for intelligence and price for energy, regardless of how quickly we accelerate. As long as there is price for intelligence and price for energy, price for intelligence meaning you have cost of labor, whatever that labor is, whatever we engage in, and cost of energy would be like we need energy to, go around living our lives. So as long as that is not completely renewable, you won't have technological utopia. So would you agree with that? Because all problems are short money problems. There is another argument wherein, all problems in the world are short money problems, meaning like the problem right now that we think are critical won't be problem 30 years from now, but all the problems need to be solved now, and we cannot look for 30 years until we survive and live for 30 years, right? So short money problems are the big problems, and short money problems, as Altman would put it, are cost of intelligence and cost of energy in the whole economy. So ultimately, it boils down to these, and access to energy and access to intelligence propels you to develop new technologies, be innovative, stuff like that. Would you agree?
I mean, I would even simplify it further. I think cost of intelligence is also a function of energy, right? Like, so César Hidalgo wrote a book called Why Information Grows, but the idea essentially is, as human beings, we take energy from the sun and we essentially make things that are very organized, right? So in contrast to the second law of thermodynamics, where entropy increases, there is a movement of energy or movement of disorder from the sun into the earth, we are able to, take the disorder that is happening in the sun and use the energy that is a result of this order to create order on the earth, right? And
that's great. That's a fantastic point. I never heard this before.
Yeah, no, it's a great book. I haven't read the whole thing, but César Hidalgo, Why Information Grows. It's a great book. And so
that's essentially talking about entropy, right?
Yes, exactly. And the reason why essentially there's an entropy, like a high entropy source in the world, in the earth, and the reason essentially you're taking energy from the sun, and the sun is becoming more disordered, and we're taking that energy and using that to make the earth more ordered, right? Of course, the disorder from the sun is more than the order in the earth, but we're essentially using the energy that comes from increasing disorder to make order in our society, right? And you can think of intelligence essentially as something like that, right? Intelligence is something that takes in energy and learns how to increase order, right? Something that takes in energy and produces order, right?
Yeah, I think, have you heard of Leontief input-output model? I'm pretty sure that's one of the first things people do. And if you incorporate intelligence in it, it's like an intermediate product.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's great.
There is
has any papers been written about I just heard this from Altman, but have there been any papers written about, let's say, cost of energy being the ultimate, let's say, source of all power?
I imagine so. Steve Keen is some relatively non-mainstream economist, and I imagine he would have something written. So Steve Keen, Steve regular spelled Keen, Keen. I imagine he has some things about energy usage in the economy because he talks about that a lot in his blog or in his
But
podcast.
if somebody were to run this experiment, then all energy-rich countries were to be very developed. That is not the case.
Well, I mean,
Wouldn't that be the case? Wouldn't that, if you have to run a social experiment and if you give such treatment effects, wouldn't you expect? But there are other factors that are coming into play which are distorting the incentives here.
yeah, I mean, you have this idea essentially where intelligence creates intelligence, right? And so, right, like the obvious main intelligence is human intelligence creating robot intelligence, right? But like the thing is, not even though energy is spread across the world in uneven amounts, the amount of intelligence that is effective is also spread across the world in uneven amounts, right? And so what we have is we have a world where the comparative advantage of, let's say, Saudi Arabia is to give the U.S. energy, and the comparative advantage of the U.S. is to take that energy and do it to reduce entropy and build something that is organized, like a Tesla car or a computer or even a pencil, right? And all of these things, you're taking energy and taking molecules and making them into something more ordered that can do things that are useful to human beings, right? So
This is the David Ricardo's argument,
yeah,
comparative advantage.
yeah, but with something really trippy like energy and intelligence, right? Rather than like shoes and like fruit or something.
I think now we are able to boil it all down and to one commodity, as opposed to in those days, in the 1800s, you would have seen everything as an advantage. But now we can clearly see ultimately it's energy. Yeah, I never looked at it that way before, wherein intelligence was a derivative of energy. I mean, when you state it the way you state it, it seems very obvious. But yeah, that's a good, let's say, step function forward, wherein people are thinking about this. What's the ultimate thing? You need to have energy. You need to have sun. That's why you need vitamin D, stuff like that, right? So
yeah, it's not my insight. I'm stealing it from César Hidalgo and Steve Keen. So,
any interesting books that you've read that you would recommend?
well, that book is good. Why Information Grows by César Hidalgo is good. If you want other economic things, Poor
Or
Economics is about
yeah,
Poor
good.
Economics about. Well, I'll go through econ books first, and then we'll talk about other books. Poor Economics is good. It's about basically development economics and how we can help basically places grow. Why Nations Fail by Semiglu and Robinson is also very good. The Freakonomics book is also a cool book, and they have a nice podcast association with it. So those are some econ books I would recommend. What other books? As far as, I mean, I spend a lot of time reading like politics books as well. There's who is Robert Draper is a good author that talks about sort of the creation of the Tea Party, the creation of the MAGA and stuff like that. And he has a couple interesting books. I forget their title, but he's the author, Robert Draper. He's got some good books. What's her name? There are, a lot of good books on Trump that is sort of what a guilty pleasure of mine, just reading all the different things that Trump has done. I apologize for being political at this point, but those books are very good too. Wherever you are on the political spectrum, it's just kind of funny to just listen to the things Trump does. And you may even disagree with them. It's just his behavior is just hilarious in what I would think a bad way. But if you're, a supporter of Republicans,
David Epstein's book on range, where he talks about how generalists, succeed in the specialized world, is a very interesting book.
Yeah,
wherein what you read and what you study is almost not used, but the fact that you've done that process ensures that you have adaptability to some new skill. Would you agree that's a good trait to have, adaptability, wherein like you learn economics, but you do math, and if you do math, you can survive in machine learning, data science. that's a good trade. And also, you'll be good with logic, and you'll be good with money and investing in money. Would you agree?
Yeah, I'm a total big believer in range. Again, you have to actually, so the thing with range though is you really have to be very good at certain things, right? So you can't just be like, inch deep and mile wide or whatever in everything. You should have good, strong abilities in certain areas. But you get essentially, and we talk about network effects, but you get essentially quadratic benefit of learning more and more things, right? Because let's say you have, n topics you're an expert of, then you have sort of n choose 2 different connections you can make, right? And so the larger n is, you scale quadratically with the number of connections you can make across different fields. And so I think that's a real significant argument for the fact to develop range. Now, of course, you can't just understand like, mathematics at the arithmetic level and say, oh, I have a lot of range, because everyone is already like basically arithmetic has been, basically there is no low hanging fruit in arithmetic, right? Like no one is publishing research in like addition. But so you have to, have a somewhat deep understanding. But once you have a deep understanding in one thing, as you spread out, essentially you get a quadratic benefit from learning more and more things, in my mind.
Yeah. I think this is a great note, and I think we want to do this kind of a discussion like pretty much every week and cover a bunch of topics that might be on everybody's mind, but wouldn't be able to comprehend or wouldn't be able to put in context and paradigms like the way, let's say, we can. So people might be interested in listening to something like this. So hopefully we can do more of these and do book recommendations and things that people might be interested in, because there are a lot of people in this world who won't have access to knowledge, even though information is inundated all around. Everybody feels they're sequestered in their own struggles. And if they find some sort of a cathartic movement wherein they look at some discussion which is interesting and enthusiastic to begin with, and at the same time provide solutions to whatever they're going through, that'll be of great value add to a lot of people.
Right. Yeah. Happy to continue this. Yeah.
Thanks, Cameron, for being on this podcast. Let's see, we can do more of these conversations every week.
Yeah, happy to continue on the podcast. I really appreciate the stuff you do, Akash. Your the company you do and the education, machine learning education that you provide is something that's very commendable for people looking to get into the space.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
All right. See you. Thanks.